All right, all right. Good afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone is doing well. We are about to jump straight into it. Let's get everything going on the local server. All right, so today what I'm looking to get accomplished is building out the design layout of our dashboard for the Fullstack Nextjs Mongoose MongoDB project. Last video, we added better off using the Google OAuth social provider. And today we're going to update our design so that we have a more modern dashboard UI, a little easier to work with, a lot more visually appealing, and we can kind of move on and do some more complex, cool things with this. So let's go ahead and jump straight into it and take care of that today. All right, so first thing I want to do is go ahead and get the project started on the local host, and that will be npm run dev. Alrighty. Give it just a moment. And we get started on localhost 3000. All right, so we have our dashboard or column, or we have our task tracker up and going, and we'll give this an official name at some point, but no worries for right now. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I want to do is establish a shell. So if you've ever used like a real dashboard from Vercel, Notion, Superbase, MongoDB, Atlas, all of those websites kind of have a common layout, and that's basically where you have a sidebar on the left and a header at the top, and within that you have the content that changes based upon the home page or the page or the route that you may currently be on. So that's what we want to get accomplished for our dashboard today. The shell is going to kind of hold everything together. It's going to have the navigation on the left-hand side with the sidebar. The header will control the authentication, and then the actual body or the content of this page will specifically be managed by the authenticated user and whatever columns, tasks, posts, notes, whatever they have assigned to that specific user. So the starting point for this, as I mentioned, is going to be a Nextjs 16 project. And most importantly, we're going to take advantage of a lot of the cool features that come within Next in order to get this done. So we'll begin by establishing something that's pretty cool by Next as well, and that is called a route group. If you're not familiar with the route group, it's basically Next's way of having the option to opt out of the file-based routing system that it has established by default. So currently within Next, if you create a folder within the app directory, and I'll show you really quick for demonstration purposes, named board, and add a file within it named page.tsx. If you exported a default function within the page.tsx file, and if you went to the route of localhost/board, you'll notice that we now have board page on screen. That's because Next used a file-based routing system. We added a file within the folder of board. That file name is page.tsx, so it knows that it is a front-end user interface page or front-end customer end user facing page. And then now we can display it on screen. But Next also gives you the ability to opt out of that file-based routing should you need to create a directory within the app folder. One way that you'll opt out of it and create a route grouping is by enclosing it with parentheses. So if you created a directory, that same directory within the app folder named board, but this time enclosed it with parentheses, that's going to tell Next that we need to opt out of this as a route, either for a backend or a front end route. And this is going to be viewed as a container or a grouping so that everything within this directory shares the same layout. So now I'm going to move this page.tsx within the board, that board folder that we just created that's enclosed in parentheses. If we go back to the localhost 3000 and refresh the page, you'll notice that nothing changes. And that is because we're taking advantage of the route grouping so that everything within this directory shares the same layout. And most importantly, it is ignored by Next as a route. And just to show you what I'm talking about, if I try to go back to localhost 3000/board, you'll notice that it's saying that the page cannot be found, although we do have a folder named board within the app directory. Because it's enclosed in parentheses, it is not viewed as a route within Next. So we'll keep this board grouping and we'll keep the page.tsx within it. I'll close this page out, but I do want to add a file named layout.tsx. Layout is one of those special names provided by Next that allows you to share a specific unique layout based upon the grouping of where this layout file is located. So because I have this layout file located within the board directory that holds our homepage of page.tsx, everything within this route grouping of board that's within that's being shared and from the layout.tsx file will have this exact same layout. So that makes it pretty cool. We'll go ahead and update this, clean this up a little bit. All right, so let's go ahead and begin to style the design and layout of our board. And what I want to do is I want to have a sidebar on the left and a header at the top, which is going to be the shell. And then within it, we'll have the columns that will eventually redesign as well. And these columns will eventually be specific to the logged in user. So first things first, let's go ahead and copy the children. And we're going to, inside of the return statement, inside of the initial div, we're going to add another div. This specific div is going to be the main div for our sidebar that we're going to have listed here, sidebar. And then if we come underneath this sidebar, we're going to add one more div. This div is going to be the one that will contain our header. And then underneath that div, I'm going to add a main tag. This is where we're going to hold the main content, and I'm gonna paste back in the children that I just copied. So if I save this file, notice that we see the header at the top and, excuse me, the sidebar at the top. After we save this file, we see the sidebar at the top, and directly underneath it, we see header. That's the indication that this layout has the ability to hold or is displaying the header and the sidebar to everything that's going to be within this specific route grouping. So we see that the layout file is working as we intended. Oh, give me 1 second here. All right, sorry about that. So the first thing we'll do is set the background style. This will be the style for this. This will be the background color for the routes that are within this specific route grouping. And I'm going to make this pound FA, FA, FA. No, everything but pound. There we go. So you see it is a slightly different color than the white that it was previously. And then we'll also set the height of this to be full. I'm just going to change this to something a little more pronounced to make sure that it's working. Yep. Perfect. Then inside of the next div, I want to set the height for it to full. And we'll also give this a direction of flex. So notice now we have the sidebar on the left and we have the header at the top and we have our main content within the body of the page. So that is coming together. And then we have the text of sidebar. And what we want to do is replace this text with the actual sidebar component. So within the root of our project, inside of the components directory, we'll add another folder named sidebar. And inside of it, a file named sidebar.tsx. We'll just export a default function and we'll name it sidebar. And we'll need to return something. We'll return an aside with the text of sidebar new. TURN. There we go. Now let's import this inside of the layout.tsx. And we'll replace the text of sidebar with the component sidebar. And if we save the file, you see it now reads sidebar new. So we know that it's coming from the new component that we just created. So let's give some life to this sidebar component. And as I mentioned, this is going to be the main driver of our layout, our routes, and give us the ability to navigate throughout the application. And the other thing with this is that we won't be able to see this when we're on or when we're not authenticated, but we'll worry about that portion in just a moment. So let's begin by marking this file as use client, as we will need some client side interactivity. The first is going to be use state. Then we'll bring in link. Finally, we'll bring in use path name. And that should come from next navigation. Okay, so this is basically what we need to kind of give us access to identifying the route that we're on, updating the state of that specific label, and also navigate in between routes that we set up eventually within our app directory. So I want to have, for styling purposes, some icons just to give a better user experience. And also on small devices, we'll only see the icon itself. And on larger devices, we'll be able to see the label and the icon. So we'll install a soft package to help with that. We'll go back to the terminal, and that will be, I think we'll use React icons. So this will be npm React icons. This is a simple, lightweight icon package. Works perfect, but there are a few others. Feel free to use whichever you like. And I'm just going to import it now. React-icons, and I'll be using the FI icons, but there are several to pick from. All right, so first, let's start out by defining the types that we'll need. And I'm going to name this nav item. The first will be the href, which is going to represent the route that we're on. That'll be the label to help us identify it. We'll have the label, which is what we'll see in a desktop view next to the icon. And then we'll also have icon, and that will be a React component. No, we need component type for this. And if there's a class name, it will be a string. Next, instead of, to make this more modular and to give us more flexibility as this project could potentially grow out, instead of hard coding the routes that we're going to have, or for each href and the label and the icon, we're going to create an array of objects using this nav item. So we'll create a const named nav items and set it equal to nav item. That should be the colons and not an equal sign, excuse me. The first key within this object is going to be href. And we'll set this href to the home route for right now. That could change. Next will be label, and we'll label it board. And then we'll want an icon with this. So the first icon I'm going to bring in is the FI layout icon. So we'll go FI layout. And then we'll go back to the object and we'll have a icon, which will be FI layout. Perfect. So that will be our first route. And to show how it works, I'm just going to create one nav item for right now. We'll come back and add more in just a moment. Inside of the sidebar function, let's get access to path name. This is going to give us the ability to read the path name from the parameters URL, and then we'll create a state variable named expanded. This is going to be for later on once we have the ability to toggle the size of the sidebar itself. And the initial state for this will be true. We want the initial state of the sidebar to be open, but the user has the ability to close it based on their personal desire. So let's go ahead and style out this sidebar first. Inside of the aside, let's give this a class name, and I'm going to make this one dynamic because eventually we're going to have different widths based upon if it is expanded or not. So inside of this class name, we'll pass in some temporal literals, and I'm going to give it a class name of relative flex, and we'll set the direction to column. The background color will be white. We'll give it a little shadow, and we'll make it small. I want it to have a border on the right. That border color will be neutral 100. And if I save it, you see we have a white background, a slight border, and we have a default width of this based upon the text that we have on screen. So we'll keep that as it is right now. And just to finish out this initial styling, we'll give it transition. What we'll be transitioning is the width. And we'll give a duration of 200. and go ease out. This is going to control the state of it, or the how it transitions as we expand and close the sidebar. And so just to confirm that we have the ability to expand this, we don't necessarily have to set the state for it just yet. I'm going to bring this down the line, and we'll pass the $ curly braces because we want to do some dynamic JavaScript. If we click expand it, so whatever we indicate to control expand it, if it is expanded, we want it to be one lift. And if it is not expanded, we want it to be another width. So the initial width, if it is expanding, I'm going to set it to 60. And if it is not expanded, I want that width to be 20. And the width I'm referring to is the width of this sidebar. So right now it is 60 because we're in an expanded state. And it's to show you, if I reduce it to 10, you see the size shifts. So we'll go back to the initial state of 60. Just kind of designing the build of this a little bit before we give the ability to toggle. Above the sidebar new text for right now, let's add a div. This div is going to hold everything within this aside. How do I want to do this? Because I don't know. We may change. I'm not sure exactly how I want this initial header to look. So we'll just give it a div for right now. And think about this for a second. All right. I think what I'll do is just create a separate logo, and that will reduce some of the hard coding that we'll have within this. Plus, we'll be able to use that logo throughout the actual app. So inside of components, we'll store that in a directory named UI and add a file named logo.tsx. I think I already have this somewhere. I don't want to spend a bunch of time coding a logo. This is just a simple logo that I created versus wasting your time typing it all out. Just going to paste it in here. But I'm just using a FI React icon, giving it some style and some text. Name this application board flow. And if I go to our sidebar and we import logo from UI/logo, and we'll just bring it in within this div. You see we have the board flow logo listed there, and we'll need to clean it up a little bit. Right now I know it doesn't, I need to give it some padding at the top. So we'll go inside of this div, give it a class name of flex. Padding on the X of 4, on the Y of, we'll go 3. We'll give it a border bottom, make the border neutral 100. Let me see, we have a little border there. And I think that should be good for it. Yeah, that should be fine. All right, so now let's have a button that will give us the ability to open and close this sidebar. So what I think I'll do next is underneath this logo, we'll need to bring in or use some JavaScript, and we'll go expanded. If it is expanded, we want one state, and if it is not expanded, we don't want to see it. So we'll go expanded, and inside of this we'll pass a button. This is what's going to control if it is expanded, or what we'll see if it is expanded, excuse me. I'll set this to be a bell icon. So we'll go back and go FI bell. Make sure that we import it. And then we'll just pass in FI bell. Click save. And then we see we have a bell there. Let's give it a height of 4 and a width of 4. Make it a little bigger. And then let's give this a gap or space on the item center. Space on the X of 2. All right, so there's some space in between it. So if it's expanded, we can see it. If not, we won't be able to. And let's style this just a smidge. Rounded, full, the text to neutral, 500. Okay. Yeah, that should be suffice. And on hover, we'll set the background to neutral, 200. Okay. All right. So now we can add the nav items within the sidebar, and at the bottom we'll have the toggle to open and close the sidebar. So underneath this div, we can close that. We can remove the text of sidebar. Let's see. Sorry, my old boss. We sure will. All right. So let's store this inside of a nav tag. And this is going to be the links and the routes. Excuse me, this is going to be the label and icon that'll represent the routes that we can navigate to within the application. So we'll have a nav, and then inside of it, we want to return something. And what we want to return are links. So first thing we'll do is map over the nav item array, because we don't want to hard code these. We want to be able to expand and scale this without any delay or any issues. So we'll go nav items.map. And for each of them, we're going to just give them a name of item. And then now we'll want to pass something within the actual, or return something after we've rendered each of the nav items, or we've looped through them. So we'll have the return statement, and we'll pass in, you know what, I think I should make this a bracket, and then we'll remove, actually, let me just bring that back for a second. We'll return something, and we're going to return a link for each of the objects that are in the nav items array. Right now it's only one, and we want to display something on screen. So just to get something, we'll go item.label. And of course, with the href, we need to pass in a, with the link, we need to pass in a href. So this will be item.href. Oh man, I appreciate the kind words, my brother. I hope you're having a wonderful day, man. I appreciate you stopping by. I appreciate that. That means a lot. And of course, this is the first thing that's being rendered from a mapping. So we'll need to pass a key, and this can just be item.href. So we'll click save, and you see we have the text of board on screen, indicating that that's the label that is within the array of objects within the nav items. That's the only one. And as we add more, you'll begin to see more items being displayed within the sidebar. So let's style this a little bit so it looks a little better. We'll give this a class name, and we'll make it dynamic. Make sure that we pass in the temporal literals, and we'll give this the keyword of group, flex, item centered. We'll give it a gap of 3, rounded, full. We'll go padding on the X of 3 and on the Y of 2. Let's make the text small, and we'll go transition colors. Click save. Doesn't do much right now, but as we add more to this, it'll make a lot more sense to you. And then here is where we'll pass in some dynamic data. But let's go ahead and create those const that will give us access to path name and all of that good stuff, so that we can indicate if we're on that specific route. So within this mapping of the nav items, we'll create a const name icon. We'll set it equal to item.icon. That's going to allow us to display the icon. Then we need a const of is active. We'll set it equal to path name. And this will be item.href. Or we want to pass in the path name, and we'll say if the path name is equal to the home route and item.href is equal to board, then we want this to treat the home route as the board. That's just, and then we could have created a separate route, but I just figured it would be a little easier doing it this way. So with this is going to give us the ability to indicate what route that we're on by using a variable name is active and getting access to the use path name hook provided by Next, and I just set that use path name hook to have a name of path name. So now within the link where we're dynamically passing in our class name, let's go ahead and bring in that variable is active. So we'll go $ is active. And if it is active, that'll start with the question mark. We want to do something. Otherwise, we want to do something else. So if it is active, we want to set the background color to neutral 300. And we'll make it neutral 100. And we'll set the text color to neutral 600. And you can see that we have a little background color there because that is the path that we're currently on. And if it is not active, we want to set the text to neutral 500. And on hover, we want to set the background to neutral. I think it'd be better if we made this lighter. So we'll say neutral 50. And on hover, I want the background color to be neutral. Let's make it neutral 900 and not the background color, the text. Click save. And you can't really tell because we only have one route inside of our array, but we'll change that. But first, I want to change this from rounded full to maybe large. There, that looks a little better. And I'll give this some padding in just a moment. But for right now, let's go ahead and add another route within our array. So I'm just going to copy this. And the second route that we want to have within this array, we'll make it task, SKS. We'll give this a label of my task. And we'll set the icon to a list. I think it has a list. FI list. Yep. And I'll change this to list. So as you can see, the use path name is active variable that we created is working perfectly because we see that we're on the home route, which is what we passed in. And because we're on the home route as /board, which is going to give us the ability to expand without having to update this, we wanted to have a specific color to that particular label and eventual icon. We set the background color to 100 and the text color to 600, and that's what we see on screen. And if it is not on that active route, we want the text to be 500, and on hover, we want to give a little bit of a background color, and the text, we want it to change as well. So we see that that's working perfectly. But just to confirm, let's add a route named task that we can click on and confirm that the href actually changes. So inside of the app directory, inside of the route grouping of board, we'll add a directory named task with an S and then a file named page.tsx. I'll just export a quick component named task page, click save. And then if I click on my task, notice that it changes to the task page and the indicator is now highlighted around my task because that's the route that we're currently on. And we have the ability to navigate back, and that is working perfectly as well. The other cool thing is you see that the layout and route grouping is working because the My Task page has the exact same layout with the sidebar and header as my board page, which is the home layout. So that's perfect. We'll close this out for right now. And let's continue to style or finish out the styling of our sidebar, and then we'll work on some functionality next. So I think the next thing I want to do is give this a little bit of styling so we can give it some space and allow those nav items to breathe a little bit, if you will. So inside of the nav, we'll give this a class name with some space on the Y. Let's make this space 1. And we'll set the direction to flex 1. We'll give a padding on the X of 2, which is giving some padding here. We'll give some padding on the Y of, we won't give any padding on the Y. Let's give it some padding up top. That way, yep, it comes down a little bit, and we'll make that 4. And we'll make overflow in the event this grows and we have a lot of routes on the Y. We'll set it to auto. All right, so that's perfect. All right, so now we can shift our focus to finishing out the style of the sidebar. So I'm going to remove well, I'll keep the item label, but right above it, let's add a icon, or the icon component that we created. There. So now we see the icons appear on screen. We'll give it a class name of width of 4, height of 4, and set the shrink to 0. There. I think that looks pretty good. And we can navigate in between. Works perfect. All right. So next thing, or last thing I want to do is style the item label. So we'll copy this. We'll highlight it, cut it, and replace it with a span. We'll paste back in the label, click save, no change, perfect. Give this span a class name. This is going to be dynamic because we want it to conditionally render based upon the state of this sidebar. So we'll start with a white space of no wrap. We'll go transition, opacity. We'll make the duration 150. Now we'll pass in some dynamic data. We'll go expand it. We want to do something, and if it is not expanded, we don't want to do something. Remember, if it's expanded, we want to be able to see the text, and if it is not expanded, we don't want to be able to see it. So if it is expanded, we'll just set the opacity, which is a simple little trick, to 100 to make this feel responsive. And when it's not expanded, we want to set the opacity to 0. So right now we can't tell if this is working or not because we only have one state for the sidebar, and that is expanded. But we can go ahead and modify or update that now. So let's go ahead underneath the nav tab. Let's add a button. And this button is going to be we're going to make this button have an on-click handler that's going to control whether we are expanded or not. So it'll have the ability to set the state or to manage the state. All right. And first thing I'll do before I worry about styling this is let's just make sure that we can manage the state of this sidebar. So I'll add a on click handler. And what we want to do is have this on click handler manage the state of the state variable that we have. So we'll just say set expanded. And we don't need to do much with this because of the way that we created it. We're just going to pass the function directly to it. So we'll say we'll pass in previous, and then we'll add the exclamation mark outside of the arrow for not previous. And the initial state, if you recall, was set to true. So if we click on it, it's going to change it to false. And with the sidebar, if it is true, it's going to be the width of 60. And if it's not, it's going to be 20. And what we should also see is the text or the label disappear once we click on the button. So let's go ahead and say my board right here, and we'll add a chevron icon or something to it. So if we click on it, we notice that it changes. And if we click on it again, we notice that it expanded. So that's how we created a simple expandable sidebar. And notice that the button is still highlighted and we no longer see the label of the name of this sidebar. It's basically just the sidebar itself. Now I do notice that we need to care for the logo. So when we get done with this, we'll go back and care for the logo so we don't see the actual text. We only see the icon. But I want to make sure that we had the ability to toggle the state of this sidebar, which we do. So that's perfect. So let's go ahead and begin to style this a little bit so that it looks a little better on screen and is not so unappealing visually, if you will. So underneath the on-click handler, I'll add a class name. We'll give this flex item centered. We'll give it a gap of 2. Padding on the X of 3, on the Y, we'll set this one to 2. We'll make the text small, and we'll set the text color to neutral 500. Click save, and just notice that the color of the text has changed based upon the styling that we just gave it. And inside of this div, but above the my board, let's add another div. Perks of being married. Let's add another div of that's going to hold the chevron icon so that we can toggle if it is open or closed. So we'll need some JavaScript. Go with expanded with a question mark. We'll do something, and if it is not expanded, we want it to see something else. Let's go ahead and import the FI chevron left and right icons. Chevron left, chevron right. Cool. And it will come down. And if it is expanded, we want the arrow to be pointing to the left. And we'll just give this a class name with a height of 4, width of 4. And if it is not expanded, we want it to point to the right, meaning that if you click it, it will toggle. Cool. So we see my board, we see the chevron there. And if we click on it, we see the chevron icon go from pointing to the left, but to the right. And then we see that it toggles back. So I'm going to, I think I'm gonna put this in a span so that we can not see it in the event we toggle. So we'll remove the my board text, replace it with a span, and we'll say expanded with a question mark, my to-do board. This is what the user will see. Otherwise, we'll just pass an empty string. So since it's not expanded, you don't see that. The only thing you see is the chevron pointing to the right. And if you click on it, you see my to-do board listed there. So I'll just give this some styling with a class name so that it transitions a little better. This is going to be dynamic. We'll go transition, the opacity. We'll set the duration to, I think we did 150, so we'll just keep it consistent. And now let's pass some dynamic data. Where's that $sign? There you go. If it is expanded, we'll do something. Otherwise, we'll do something else. So if it's expanded, obviously we just want the opacity to just be 100 so that it is easily seen. And if it is not expanded, we'll set the opacity, OPIC TY to 0. And then we'll also go pointer events to none. Click save, and let's test it out. All right, so that's much smoother. You know what? I think I'm gonna give this the exact same thing. We copy this. I probably could have put this in an array to not repeat myself. So we'll go class name. We'll just remove this so that either one you click on, you'll get the same experience. Go copy. We'll paste this in, and I think we set the height. I did 4. We'll make it 5, and we'll set the width to 5. It's a little better. And I can just copy this, remove this class name, replace it with this one. Now if we click on either one, you know what? Remove that opacity. There. There we go. All right. So let's clean up the sidebar just a smidge before we move on. I think it was the logo that I wanted to address. Let's put it inside of its own div. We'll go div, add logo. All right. So let's give this div a little bit of style as well. We'll give it a class name of overflow hidden flex. There we go. Item center. So now we expand it. There we go. Okay. All right. So now let's shift our focus to updating this header because I think we're good here. We'll remove the sidebar. We can close out the logo. We'll go back to the main layout.tsx file. And current, we have a header that's within the div. We have the header text. We can replace that header text with an actual header component, and then we can remove the login information or the authenticated user information from the page.tsx and replace it inside of the actual header itself. So I think what we'll do next is create the header. So inside of the components directory, we'll add a folder named header. And inside of it, we'll add a file named header.tsx. We're going to export default a asynchronous function in this file because this will have authentication, and our authentication is coming from the server. Because it's coming from the server, we need to await a response back. So we need to make this asynchronous, and then we'll just name inside of this header component, we'll just name it new header. Click save. Go back to the layout.tsx and we'll just import header. Be sure it's coming from underscore components, which it is. And then inside of the return statement, we'll replace the header text with the header component. Click save and we should see new header on the screen. Yep, that's what we see there. So basically what we'll do is we'll go ahead and just style this header. I think first we can, we can go ahead and just remove the header from the page.tsx file. So we'll go to app, page.tsx, and this header, I'll just delete it. Click save and it is gone. We still have the ability to toggle, but we now see the header at the top of this page and we're going to add it here. So we'll close out the page.tsx, go back to the header. First thing we'll do is bring in some imports to help bring it to life. The first is going to be auth. That should be coming from @lib /auth. We'll then bring in the headers. And that should be coming from next headers. We'll import the logo. And then finally, we'll need to bring in the sign in and sign out button that we created. Sign in with Google and sign out button. Perfect. Now, inside of the header function, let's go ahead and get access to the user that could potentially be logged in. And we're using Better Off to help manage our authentication state. All right. So inside of it, we'll create a const named session and set it equal to await auth.api. dot, this one is going to be get session. And remember, actually, we don't need to do that. It's simple enough. Let me remove this. Sorry. Remember, with this is where we're leveraging Next to kind of help manage this. So we'll say the headers is going to be set to await headers. And we have to make sure that we call it. We'll click save. I don't know if I'm going to display this information. Well, I'll just bring the user in. So we'll say const user is equal to session with the question mark, because there may not be a session user. And then we could get access to email, image, name, updated at, etc. But I don't think I'm going to necessarily use that for this. So now we're ready to just go ahead and style the header. So the header tag, we'll give it a class name with a width of full. We'll set the background to white. Now you can't really see it right now. We'll give it a border bottom. And we'll set the border color to neutral 100. Can't really see it right now, but it does appear. Let's give this some padding, or we'll just set the height of it to 16 to make it easier. There. So it matches that color, and probably can't see it that well, but we'll change the background to orange 200 or 300. Click save, and then you see the background is there. That width isn't all the way out. Let me go background orange 300. Go to layout.tsx. Let me set this class name width to full. There. All right, so that's set. Make sure if you're following this, you set this div right above the header in the layout.tsx file. Give it a width to full. We'll go back to this and set the background color back to white. And then finally, we'll just do flex item centered there. I won't worry about any padding inside of the header. We'll want to control that in a separate component. We'll just kind of let this be the outer shell, if you will. So we'll remove the text of new header and replace it with a div. Inside of this is where we'll pass the user information. But for right now, we'll set the style to a max width. And we'll set that maximum width to 1400 pixels. And we'll give it a margin of auto, or 0 on the top and the bottom, and auto on the left and right. That way it kind of self-manages a center even placement. Then we'll give it a class name with a padding on the X of 4. We'll set the direction to flex, the default of row. Center the items on the x-axis, give it a little gap of 2, and be sure the width is set to full. Now, I know you can't see anything just yet, but we're going to change that in just a moment. So now what we want to do is render one view if we have a user and a different view if we don't have a user. So we'll use JavaScript to help with that, and then we'll give it a question mark. Inside of the parentheses, we'll do something if there's a user, and if there's not a user, we'll do something else. I'm going to pass a div in both of these. Okay, so we currently have a user, so we'll start with that first. We'll just give this a class name of flex item center. I think it'd be easier if you could actually see what we're doing. So we'll give another div, and we've already imported the sign out button. So let's just bring that in, sign out button. Yep. And we may change that eventually. And then here, I want to display the username of the user, I think. So we'll just go user.email, click save. We see the user email there, and then we'll just give this some style. Set the color to, actually, we'll just keep this with a class name. Um, Class name, we'll set the text to neutral 600. We'll make the font bold, and we'll make the font size. I think it's text. Yeah, text. We'll make it large. Click save. Okay, so that adjusted the size for our button and the email, which we can, yeah, I'll keep it. Flex, let's make this, let's make this justify between or with the full. And yeah, that works. What if we added the logo right here? Ooh, that's seen better days. So I think, actually, I want to show this whether we have a user or not. So we'll move this here. Yeah. Sorry, just trying to debate how I want this presented. It's not that serious though. I think I'll remove the logo for now. We'll make this width full. And we'll go flex, justify between items centered. Okay. And this is if we have a logged in user. And if we don't have a logged in user, I want to show the logo and a sign in button. So we'll go class name of flex, item centered, justify between with a width of full. And we'll just pass the logo and also the sign in with Google button. So you can't see it right now, but let's just click sign out. We get the logging out state update. Let me show the terminal to make sure we're not getting an error or anything. No, we're not getting that. So let me refresh this. Okay, so now it's showing sign in and we see the logo. And if we sign out, sign in, we see we're logged in. Let's change the view to a large view just to confirm what we're seeing. Give me 1 second. There. So as you can see, we have the maximum width set there, and we'll come back and set this, and these columns will look a lot different. And we'll actually move this to be a column itself. And then my task will look a little different as well. But we have the maximum width set there. So we see the user that's logged in the sign out button. And if we just click logging out or sign out, we get the logging out message that we can't click on. And I think this is where we probably should have added the refresh because it doesn't actually refresh the state. So let's check on that now. I think it is router.refresh. Yep. Now let's go and check it out. And if we click sign out button, it refreshes. Perfect. And we'll click sign in. And now we see the sign out. Okay. All right, cool. So we got this updated and we now have a design dashboard with the sidebar. Let's make sure the collapsing works as well. So if I click on it, you see the sidebar does close. That expanded state goes from true to false. It's no longer expanded. And if we click on it, we see that it toggles and it changes. So perfect. That is that's going to take care of the sidebar dashboard header layout, our app shell. Next, we'll focus on the actual styling of the content within the shell. We'll marry the user to the columns. We'll add some security features, add a different route for a note editor, a calendar view, and a few other cool things. So I will see you in the next one.